There is an old saying, if walls could talk, what secrets would they tell? We say this metaphorically. We think about the history of a house, the families that lived there before us. But take a moment to look at the walls in your room right now. Look at the space between the drywall. Look at the crawl space above your ceiling. Look at the gap behind your bathroom cabinet. We assume those spaces are empty. We assume they are filled with insulation, dust, maybe a few spiders. But what if they weren't empty? What if, right now, while you are watching this video, someone is sitting inside your walls, listening to your breathing, watching you sleep? In 1986, a family in Pepperell, Massachusetts, thought their house was haunted. They heard knocking. They saw furniture move. They saw messages written on the walls in red liquid. They thought they were being tormented by a poltergeist. They were wrong. There was no ghost in the Bowen house. There was something much, much worse. This is the terrifying true story of Daniel LaPlante, the boy who lived in the walls. Our story begins in the winter of 1986. The Bowen family lived in a typical two-story wood frame house. It was a normal life. Frank Bowen was a hard-working father. He had lost his wife to cancer, so he was raising his children alone. There was 16-year-old Tina and her younger sister, Karen. Tina and Karen were typical teenagers. They worried about school, boys, and music. But slowly, the atmosphere in the house began to change. It started with small things, things that you can easily explain away. Tina would leave a glass of water on her nightstand. When she woke up, it would be moved to the other side of the room. The toilet would flush when no one was in the bathroom. The television channel would change on its own. At first, the girls thought they were just being forgetful, or maybe it was an electrical glitch. But then, the activity escalated. One afternoon, Tina came home from school to find the furniture in her bedroom rearranged. Not just moved, but stacked. The chairs were on top of the bed. The drawers were pulled out. She felt a cold chill run down her spine. She called her sister. "Did you do this?" "No," Karen said, terrified. "I thought you did it." They told their father, Frank. Frank was a logical man. He checked the locks. The doors were locked. The windows were shut. There was no sign of forced entry. He told the girls, "Maybe we have a loose draft. Or maybe one of your friends is playing a prank." But deep down, Frank was unsettled. Things got worse. The family began to hear noises at night. Soft thumping sounds coming from inside the walls. Scratching sounds coming from the basement. One night, the girls were watching TV. Suddenly, the volume skyrocketed to the maximum level. They scrambled for the remote, but it wouldn't work. Then, they started finding the messages. Notes written on the basement walls. Not in ink, but in something red something that looked like blood. "I'm in your room. Come find me." The family was now convinced of one thing. The house was haunted. Specifically, the girls believed it might be the spirit of their deceased mother trying to contact them, or worse, a demonic entity. The fear in the house was palpable. They stopped sleeping with the lights off. They stayed together in one room. Finally, they decided to conduct a seance. A friend of Tina's came over. They sat in a circle in the bedroom. They lit candles. They asked the spirit to show itself. "Is anyone here with us?" Knock. 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 The sound came from the wall right next to them. The girls screamed. This was proof. There was a ghost, but the ghost was about to make a physical appearance, and it would be the most traumatizing moment of their lives. A few days later, Tina walked into her bedroom. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the floor. She looked at her closet. The door was slightly open, and there, standing in the corner of the room, was a figure. It looked like a nightmare. It was wearing a Native American-style tunic. It had a long, wild wig, and its face was painted in black and white war paint. In its hand, it held a hatchet, a sharp metal hatchet. Tina didn't scream at first. Her brain couldn't process what she was seeing. Was it a ghost? Was it a monster? The figure raised the hatchet. Tina screamed. She ran. She grabbed her sister, and they bolted out of the house, screaming for their father. Frank ran inside with a baseball bat. He searched the room. He searched the closet. Empty dot. The figure was gone, vanished into thin air. Frank called the police. The police arrived and searched the entire property. They checked the attic, the basement, the yard. Nothing. No footprints. No broken windows. The police officer looked at Frank skeptically. "Sir, are you sure your daughters aren't just seeing things? Teenagers have wild imaginations." Frank was frustrated. He knew his girls were terrified, but he couldn't explain how a man with an axe could simply disappear from a locked house. The family was forced to stay in the house. They had nowhere else to go. Imagine the terror of going to sleep that night, knowing that thing might still be there. A few days later, the ghost returned. This time, Frank was home. He heard the girls screaming upstairs. He ran up. The girls were pointing at the wall. "We heard him. We heard him in the wall." Frank looked at the wall. It was a solid wall. But then he noticed something. Under the bathroom sink, there was a small cabinet. Frank opened the cabinet doors. He saw a small gap between the pipes and the wall. He shined his flashlight into the darkness, and looking back at him were a pair of human eyes. Frank jumped back. "He's in the wall. Get out of the house." He grabbed his kids and ran. He flagged down a police car that happened to be patrolling. Sergeant Stephen Moore enter the house with his gun drawn. He went to the bathroom cabinet. He pried open the paneling. What they found behind that wall shocked the entire town of Pepperell. There was a hollow space between the walls of the house. It was a crawl space that ran behind the bathroom and the bedrooms. Inside that space, someone had been living. They found a sleeping bag. They found food wrappers. They found a small radio. They found waste buckets. And disturbing of all, small holes drilled into the drywall that looked directly into Tina's bedroom, directly into the bathroom. This person had been living there for weeks. He had been watching Tina change clothes. He had been watching the family eat dinner. He had been listening to their private conversations. Every time they left the house, he would come out. He would eat their food. He would use their toilet. He would move the furniture to mess with their heads. And when they came home, he would slip back into the walls like a rat. The police dragged the intruder out. It was not a ghost. It was a 17-year-old boy named Daniel LaPlante. Tina recognized him instantly, and her heart sank. Daniel was a local boy. Tina had gone on just one date with him a few months earlier. On that date, Daniel had acted strange. He was intense. He asked weird questions about her mother's death. Tina felt uncomfortable and decided not to see him again. She politely rejected him. Most boys would have moved on. Daniel LaPlante did not move on. He became obsessed. He learned the layout of her house. He found a way to enter through the basement and discovered the crawl space. He decided that if he couldn't be her boyfriend, he would be her ghost. He wanted to control her fear. He wanted to be the center of her world, even if it was through terror. The police arrested Daniel. He was charged with breaking and entering. He was sent to a juvenile detention center. The Bowen family thought the nightmare was over. They thought they were safe. But the story doesn't end here. In fact, this was just the prologue, because Daniel LaPlante was not just a creepy stalker. In October 1987, almost a year later, Daniel LaPlante managed to escape from custody. He was now 18. He was angry. He was desperate, and he had a taste for terror. He didn't go back to the Bowen house. He went to a different house in the nearby town of Townsend. The Gustafson family lived there. Priscilla Gustafson was a 33-year-old nursery school teacher. She was pregnant. She lived with her husband and two small children, Abigail, 7, and William, 5. On December 1st, 1987, Daniel LaPlante broke into the Gustafson home. He found a .22 caliber Ruger pistol in the bedroom drawer. When Priscilla came home, she wasn't met by a prankster hiding in the walls. She was met by a cold-blooded killer. I won't go into the graphic details out of respect for the victims, but what Daniel did that day was an act of pure evil. He murdered Priscilla. Then he waited for the children to come home from school. He drowned them in the bathtub. When the husband, Andrew Gustafson, came home, he found his entire world destroyed. Police launched a massive manhunt. They knew exactly who they were looking for. The boy in the walls had become a mass murderer. 2 days later, a police officer spotted a man walking near the railroad tracks. It was Daniel, but what he was wearing sent shivers down the officer's spines. He was wearing the clothes of the dead husband, but underneath that, he was wearing wet, muddy clothes. Why? Because after killing the family, Daniel hadn't left immediately. Just like at the Bowen house, he stayed. He had made himself a sandwich. He had watched TV. He had relaxed in the house with the bodies of the people he had just killed. When the police finally cornered him, Daniel showed no remorse. He didn't seem to understand the gravity of what he had done. He smiled for the cameras. Daniel LaPlante was sentenced to 3 consecutive life sentences. He remains in prison to this day. He has applied for parole multiple times, claiming he has found God and wants to help others. But the families of his victims, then the Bowen family, sure that he never sees the light of day again. The story of Daniel LaPlante touches on a primal fear that we all share. We watch horror movies about ghosts, aliens, and demons, but those things aren't real. Daniel LaPlante was real. He proved that the scariest monster isn't under your bed. The scariest monster is the human being who decides that your life, your privacy, and your safety belong to him. The Bowen family eventually moved out of that house, but Tina said in interviews that for years she couldn't sleep. She would lie in bed, staring at the walls, waiting for them to move, waiting for the scratching sound. Because once you know that someone can live inside your walls, you never truly feel alone again. So, the next time you hear a creak in your floorboards, or the next time your keys aren't where you left them, don't just assume it's the wind. Don't just assume you're forgetful. Take a flashlight. Go to that small access panel in your closet and take a look inside. You might not like what you find staring back at you. Thank you for watching this deep dive into the Daniel LaPlante case. This story is a reminder to always trust your instincts. If something feels wrong in your home, investigate it. Stay safe, lock your doors, and I'll see you in the next video.